and Craig Smoak.
All right, this 4 o'clock hour. J.J. Joe, former Baylor quarterback, Baylor radio color analyst, joins us. Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. J.J., thank you, sir, for your time. So Estrada all of a sudden shows up, and there's nothing involving the statistical line of R.J. Sneed. Tyquan Thornton had 3 catches. Ebner had no yards rushing. Was that Oklahoma State's defense, or did Baylor get out of whack on offense?
Hey, Smoke, guys. Hey, thanks for having me on again. It's always a joy to join. I'll tell you, offensively, Smoke, we just weren't in rhythm. I mean, we started great. We had a 7-yard run by Abram Smith. Then we had the 7-yard catch by Estrada. And Estrada's he's good. I think really what you'll see is he and Josh Fleeks will have to vie for time because, R.J. Sneed's going to play, Tyquan's going to play. But I think they really focused on those outside guys, and Drew had some opportunity. He did move outside some, and he just made a play. He was the one guy that made a play. But overall, Oklahoma State did what Iowa State did in that second half, and they really attacked us. And I think we just weren't fully ready for, kind of what they brought to the table.
JJ, is it time to maybe take the training wheels off of Gary Bohannon?
Well, I wouldn't say that Coach has training wheels on him. I think, Coach is trying to make sure that, as he is a first-time starter, as he gets the offense down where he wants to, where he actually masters it. I think, he's just kind of trying to make sure he manages the game with Gary. But now I would agree. I really think that a coach is going to have to, tell Gary, hey, look, you're a fourth-year player. We've been here through the spring and the summer. You're going to have to do a little bit more, whether that be at the line of scrimmage, maybe making a few changes, whether that be, throwing the ball in different situations because we've really been able to dictate when we wanted to throw it. And this week was the very first time we really had to do much of the third and long type offense, but roll that package out. But I think, Gary's going to – if this team wants to go where they would need to go, where Coach Aranda wants him to go, Gary's going to have to go ahead and be willing to, take a little bit more of the responsibility.
JJ, I know you just touched on it there with Estrada. I mean, he ate some of the other players' touches by being involved really for the first time. But R.J. Sneed didn't have a catch for the first time since 2018. Is that insane to you, or just a crazy stat to me?
Well, he should go talk to somebody. He could have ran a little smoke screen or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To get himself. But I know there was a contested game, so you're just not thinking about that kind of stuff. But in any case, Oklahoma State is very aggressive, and I knew coming in they were aggressive. And Iowa State was not. Iowa State actually their first half played right into how we wanted to play offense. They wanted to read, they wanted to sit back and react, and that played into Baylor's offense, the offensive philosophy's hands. Oklahoma State's different. West Virginia's different. Texas will be different. Oklahoma will be different. And I think that was a great lesson that, hey, look, the Big 12 teams with these hybrid guys, for the most part, are not going to play like Iowa State. And a lot of times Kansas State played like that, where they sit back, read, bend, don't break. So you got to be prepared for teams to go downhill at you in the run game as well as when it's passing down. So, R.J. Sneed not getting the catch, that won't happen again, not this season.
It's part of growing up. It's a young team. I asked Dave Aranda this on Monday, and Paul kind of alluded to this with Gary Bohannon, but he had an edge to him, JJ. After the game, he was obviously upset about the Matt Jones penalty, as he should have been, because he's been preaching that. And then he was still kind of in that mode on Monday. Did you see kind of a different edge to him? And it's almost like, okay, I've been saying this, and now I'm done saying it. We have to go do it.
Exactly. Matter of fact, Smoke, I don't know if you guys caught it. He didn't do a halftime interview.
We did.
Yeah, he was irritated. Ricky was trying to catch him, and I think he just snuck by Ricky. And I could tell. I mean, he was a little edgy. I forget which game it was. I think it may have been Iowa State, but he was a little edgy in one of the games. But that's the first time we've actually had that happen quite a bit. So he's a little irritated because I could tell he really is talking about those penalties. If you remember, he took Matt out immediately. I mean, Matt ran back out, and he took him out. And then when you go look at that penalty line and And I know it just irritates him because he looks at it and says, hey, despite the way we played offensively, we had the ball twice down 3 with a chance to go ahead. And we didn't play good. He probably really didn't feel like they played good football. So he's been preaching it's going to cost us. It cost the team the other night. And that's, I'm pretty sure he really has emphasized that over the last few days.
Is it maybe it's a weird way to say this, and maybe around. I asked Ricky this the other day, that he has now an example to say, like, guys, I've been telling you this, I've been telling you this, I've been telling you this, and now you can see it in action and not just theory.
Well, yeah, that. I mean, you got the example. We have the example of Texas State. Like, if we play like this, a team that's of a lesser quality, I guess, for lack of a better term, will stay with us. But then, like you just said, Paul, I mean, it reared its ugly head and it bit you, because when you play a good team, and really for the most part, Baylor they're going to play good teams here on out, or teams that can beat you. People think about Tech struggling. Well, Tech just beat West Virginia. West Virginia's 1-3, but they're darn good 1-3 teams. So he does have that example. But I think more than that, I think Coach, man, somebody asked me, what about Coach Rand? I said, man, this dude's just a football coach. There's some guys who are head coaches. This guy's just a football coach, and he has a certain way he wants it to style and demeanor and character and all that he wants to play. And outside of, hey, I've been telling you it's going to bite you, to bit you, he wants to win a certain way. And if you don't win that way, he's going to be on you more about that than anything else.
JJ, Jarrett Daigie's had, a bit of an up and down career at West Virginia, but last week he did have a huge second half to pull them within, a chance to win that football game despite the 17-0 early deficit. He's capable of throwing the ball around, and West Virginia's always got a good fleet of receivers. Letty Brown's back at running back, but the run game has been a struggle. At the same time, Baylor's defense has given up a lot of rushing yards the last couple of weeks. What are you looking for with the Baylor defense this week, and what areas maybe from last week do you think they need to clean up?
Yeah, I really think the Baylor defense, I mean, Oklahoma State got, I think, 406 yards. But if you look at the game, our defense, they turned them over 3 times, had some untimely penalties. And really after that second half, after they got those 2 scores, I mean, really until that last drive that sealed the game, I mean, they had 3 points. And I think I wrote something for Ashton on Second 365 today that up until Baylor, when Baylor went for it on 4th down, I think it was about maybe 8 minutes to go in the 4th, Oklahoma State had maybe 117 yards in the second half. So off defensively, yes, there's always things we can do to clean up. I mean, there's some things they can play better. They can defend the run better. But I think our defense is playing winning football. Offensively, if you get a team to 17 points late in the 4th, you got to make that win. You got to make that win. And offensively, we didn't make it win. Coach did everything he could do. He went for it on 4th down. He did everything he could do. So defensively, I really would like, maybe. I mean, if I was just kind of nitpicking, I would say I would like for our front to continue to improve. I think Apu and Utley and Chitty and Cole Maxwell. Ashton Logan plays that jack position. They're playing better. They're playing good football. The backers are playing well. But to have Terrell Bernard back will help. But I would like to see our team, our front, really start putting pressure. I mean, really what I would call aggressive pressure without Coach having to call blitzes. If I had a nitpick, and that's nitpicking now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, Craig, aren't you the one that brought that up even after a couple of the non-conference games, that might have come back to haunt them a little bit? But they did get 3 turnovers, and I guess that's also bad because
I just think that the turnovers are great, but they also were, deep into your territory, and they were like saving graces when Oklahoma State was in a position to score. So if teams have been able to, or at least Oklahoma State was able to move the football a bit, and then the turnovers really, I think JJ kind of saved that from being a way uglier game than it could have been, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, you're right. Now, I mean, I'm not going to disagree, but when a team gets 3 turnovers, part of that is playing defense because. Yeah. Spencer Sanders doesn't make that. He doesn't throw that first interception if the pressure doesn't come. And I forgot the player who hit him, but if that pressure doesn't come, he doesn't throw that. So that's defense. And then a couple others. I mean, those were good defensive plays. And you're right that they moved the ball, but at the end of the day, what you want to do is force a team to either kick a field goal or turn it over. Mm-hmm. And defensively, the defense against Iowa State got some points, 29, but they were forcing them to kick field goals for a while. Right. And then the second half, think about it, the offense really didn't do much of anything.
Mm-mm. No.
This week, the offense didn't do much of anything in the whole first half. That's pressure on your D.
JJ, as a player, you've been in the locker room. You are obviously among the leaders when you were there, starting quarterback. What do you say? There's not much to say when a player who plays his ass off, excuse my language, in Matt Jones, who's all over the place and has done a great job with Terrell Bernard being out, who's supposed to be back this week. Does anything have to be said to a player who makes a boneheaded play like that?
Their coach is going to handle it. But let me say this, Smoak. In a locker room, you have all types of guys. You have guys who are thinking every second. You have guys who are critical, analytical, and then you have those guys who are just football players. They don't think until it's over. And you got to have them. And I'm not saying Matt is that kind of guy, but typically they're linebackers and, certain
fullbacks.
Types. Yeah, thank you. And the Smoak, really outside of telling Matt, Matt, hey, man, you're hurting us, don't hurt us. And his teammates saying, don't hurt us. And his teammates have to help govern him.
Right.
Because I can tell you, when Matt gets in the game, he's emotionally invested. I mean, everything is personal. And you got to have guys like him, and you can't sit him on the bench. You cannot sit him on the bench because those type of guys, you got to have that energy, you got to have that focus, and you just got to have a team of guys that are around him that can help manage him. And he'll get there. He's a sophomore? I mean, he'll get there and learn it, how to govern it, but man, you just got to have a group of guys that help you manage him while on the field.
Yeah, it's a game in which it's so violent, and I know they've changed it up a little bit, but I mean, I'd rather have them than not. It's just a matter of, you could lose a game because of a temper tantrum or a personal foul, and I'm not trying to blame him. I know Dave Aranda made it pretty clear that play cost him the game, but yeah, you don't want to temper him so much he loses who he is as a football player.
Yeah, exactly, Smoak. And look, Matt will mature more. I mean, I think he played some last year, helped me out here, but I mean, this is the first real action I think Matt is getting. He got some, so he'll get there, and coach is coaching him. Now, don't get me wrong when I said you can't sit him down. Coach he'll limit his playing time some. He'll see some, but ultimately, you just don't have a team full of like guys who can play like Matt Jones. And if you don't have this in Alabama, Alabama can roll 6 or 7 of those guys in probably. So when you got a guy like that, you're just trying to hope that he hurry up and he matures, and that you have teammates like Terrell Bernard, Jalen Petrie, Dylan Doyle, and guys who are a little bit more level headed that will help calm him down when it gets edgy.
Yeah, if you got a guy who's a wild dog, you want him to go out there and be a wild dog. You just hope that, maybe he doesn't bite too much. I think that's with Matt Jones. I don't know if you saw it, JJ, but the play before he committed the penalty, they were pulling him off. I mean, he was getting pulled. He was already was already hot about something, and then there weren't enough plays between the time he made tackles to calm him down from whatever happened before.
Yeah, and probably what coach will have to do, he'll probably have to manage his playing time. Meaning that, he maybe gets subbed a little bit more, right? Maybe you sub him, maybe you don't keep him in a certain string of plays, but yeah, he actually, I mean, and it looks like when I saw the play, I looked at it on tape. It went to the sideline, he was on top of, he did something, looks like. Then he got up, and then it's like I saw the Baylor sideline guys were pushing him back because he said something, and then the ref came over. It sounded like he said something else. I don't know if he swung or the ref caught some wind of some language. But then that's when the flag came. So he, you just got to have some guys help manage him, man. But he will have to mature, which he'll do.
JJ, appreciate it. Ought to be interesting. They have 4 weeks at home. An off week.
That's great.
After back-to-back off week, and then home again with Texas. But if they're gonna jump right back in it surely is right there in front of them. And with getting Terrell Bernard appears to be back, that sure doesn't hurt either.
Time to make hay.
Yep, it is. Thank you, JJ, as always. Appreciate your stuff and knowledge and insight. And, we didn't even ask Ricky on Monday about Coach Aranda just flying right by him.
I didn't want to.
Yeah, he didn't want to bring up a bad shot.
I did. I was listening, or I wasn't listening to the radio broadcast. I was watching TV, but because that first half was so ugly, I was like, I better check out what he has to say. I'm curious to hear what he has to say. And so I flipped open the link or whatever to the radio broadcast, and he just went on by, and I was like, all right, X out. And so, I was on there for like 20 seconds because I was waiting for him, and then there he was straight into the locker room. So, that's something that he can't do on a regular basis, for Ricky's sake and for the broadcast crew's sake. But I think that one time last week, given the situation, it made sense. And then they played better in the second half. And I absolutely agree with what JJ's saying. I'm not by any means saying the Baylor defense isn't any good or anything like that, but they have bent a lot, and you can't always rely on the interception. But he's right. Like, one of those is as a result of pressure and forcing Sanders to make a bad throw. And they're going to have to do that this weekend against Daggy. He's going to be throwing the football, because if he's not, that means they're running the football. And if they are, that means that your defense is completely cratered, because they're not running the football on anybody right now. Mm-hmm. So they shouldn't start this weekend. So that means that Daggy's going to have to throw them to a win, or Garrett Green's going to be a big part of the running game. They have to account for that. But basically, Daggy's going to have to throw them to a win unless you crater and let them run the football. And you know what? Maybe he can do that. He can do that, but I like their chances. They haven't given up a lot in the passing game this year, if you really think about it. Most teams have just run on them. So this will be a challenge for the secondary for sure, and for the D-line and linebackers to force Daggy to make some errant throws.
With Daggy, and Dred Jerning brought up the fact that Daggy had this very accurate second half.
He did, but
I do think, here's what I think about Dred Daggy. He can make a lot of the throws. But what defenses are challenging him to do is make this throw that we know that you can't make in this key spot, and he can't do it.
Well, the problem to me is that he's like Spencer Sanders. He is hot and cold. Mm-hmm. That's what he is. If you look at the first half last week, he has a strip sack, fumble, and an interception, and takes up 14-0. And then in the second half, he throws for like 1 billion yards, and they come back and they tie the game up, and they nearly win it. So that's Jekyll and Hyde. And you look at Jared Daggy, it's a lot of Jekyll and Hyde. You look at Spencer Sanders, it's a lot of Jekyll and Hyde. He made some great plays last week. He also threw 3 picks that Baylor should have won the football game off of, but their offense just couldn't score on Oklahoma State. So Oklahoma State won with defense and was able to overcome that. West Virginia's good enough on defense to overcome Jared Daggy throwing 3 picks if, again, the Baylor offense can't do anything with the football. But which version of him shows up, that's what's interesting, because he is very much like, to me, Spencer Sanders in that regard of,
good comparison,
bad and ugly, and just which one shows up, you don't really know.
That segment, by the way, the Baylor segment is brought to you by Richard Carr Buick GMC Cadillac, the Baylor Bear Hotline, JJ Joe, and in fact about to be again when we speak with and interview Jovan Overshown, who's going to tell us about some of what they noticed too, what they've heard, and what's going on with game day atmosphere, tailgating, the berm, and everything else in between.
I'll say this: I was putting together players to watch, and I did put Daggy on there. But that's because of what I just said. Like, he's going to be a factor in this game one way or the other. Is he throwing picks or is he throwing touchdowns? And that will determine a lot in this football game. And Baylor's defense will have a say in what he is able to do effectively. But you look around the rest of that team. They got a good fleet of receivers. They've got, Letty Brown, although, like we've been saying, the running game hasn't been there. But on that defensive side, I'm just sitting there looking at, players to watch. You could name everybody on that defense practically. Mm-hmm. Like the entire D-line, you could name every single one of those guys, from Stills to Alston. Was it Ade or Ade? West Virginia fan, please help me out. I can't remember right now. But, they're loaded on defense. And I'm very curious to see what Baylor's going to be able to do offensively, because – they don't give up much at all. And they get in the backfield, and Gary Bohan's going to have his head on a swivel on Saturday for sure.
Some of you in the chat room, and then eventually Jovan will join us to answer a lot of your questions. Donnie Hand, by the way, picking off Spencer Sanders is nothing to hang your hat on. No. It's still, they got them.
I'm just saying that he throws a lot of them, or he throws touchdowns, and it's a matter of what half he's playing in, and that was Daggy last week. That's what I mean by that.
Spencer Sanders Interception Club is diverse and populated as Madonna boyfriends. So
Bob Williams,
a lot of people.
There you go. Scotty B, linebackers need to step up in the run defense as well. Here's from Jimmy B. Jeff Grimes needs to trust Gary Bohannon more. He hasn't thrown an interception all year. Let him throw the rock. And he's also going to have to learn how to throw an interception. Now, I know that sounds stupid. It's like you got to learn to strike out or miss a field goal or whatever. You got to face some of that so you see how you react to it as well. Let's see.
I am with JJ, though. I don't think that they're holding him back. I think in some cases, Gary holds himself back.
Yeah.
Gary doesn't make a great throw, and then the offense is in a hole. And then all of a sudden it's, well, Jeff Grimes, why is he doing this on second down? It's like, well, because Gary just missed a throw and it's 2nd and 10.
The issue with Jeff Grimes last week was some of the third down calls and stuff like that. It wasn't, and again, we don't know what's going on with the game plan and much more.
But my point is that if Gary hits on some of those throws, then the offensive play calling is not what it was described to be, because they would have more of an opportunity to challenge a defense. But
there were some throws that were just like a pitcher having a bad night. The strike zone was out. They were, like a young pitcher didn't know how to throw anything but fastballs.
Right, but with Bohannon, I think one thing where he does probably hold himself back, and if he was going to let loose in any single way, it would be to run the football. But when he took that big pop against Iowa State, we haven't really seen him run the football since then. So I'm wondering if that's like a protection thing or a what, because there are opportunities for him to do that, and sometimes you see him just wait to try and find the throw, and then he tries to take off, and it's a second too late.
I love that he's waiting, but there's an instinct that he'll learn over time and reps and game, where sometimes I love the fact he's sticking in the pocket, but at the same time there's opportunities to run. From Daniel, sometimes in the heat of the moment, you temporarily lose your mind. Look at BG. Brittany Griner, after the Tech incident, she didn't do anything else like that again. Matt Jones will be okay. He'll learn from that experience.
I got to see raw video. A friend of mine was there covering the game in Lubbock and sent us the raw video on my phone. I remember seeing it going of Brittany Griner, and I was like, oh, man. I mean, and she played violently. But she had to, because she was
taking a beating herself.
She was running through 10 hands, getting slapped every time she was playing. And I remember that was with Jordan Barncastle. That was the last straw. I'll remember that name, Jordan Barncastle, for the rest of my life, and mostly because of the post-game nonsense that happened afterwards. But yeah, I mean, after that, Brittany didn't do anything again.
No, they still kept beating on her. Yeah,
there were some people, and I know it's, probably some of them were drinking, and some of it was the heat of the moment. But calling for Matt Jones to be booted off the team and craziness like that, and I'd never have thought like that was even worth.
No one ever said that. Yeah.
But, I'm with you. I think that it was an ugly moment for him, a learning lesson, and it happens sometimes in the heat of battle, and he'll be fine. I think they've got a lot of optimism of where his career is headed and what he can do and what he's been doing. So I think Matt Jones will be fine. He just learned a tough lesson on Saturday.
You know what? Who's the young man at Baylor got all the targeting calls, who's now in the NFL?
Chris Miller.
Chris Miller hurt the team a lot. Sometimes he's playing hard. That's the way he played, and he eventually, I don't know if he ever got better with it. He became a target himself based on, he's blown somebody up. It's got to be targeting. And so you got to be careful. It's a fine line of asking him not to play the way he's always played the game, with the exception of when it's temper or discipline, then you're going to have to intervene a little bit better.
Yeah, Chris Miller was a little bit out of control at times, but that was also just these terrible targeting rules in some cases as well, although his were,
any
pretty
kind of explosive play, the flag. Yeah, that's why the good replay now that you can do that.
For him, what ended up hurting the most was not even necessarily the penalties. It was the fact that you didn't know when he was going to be available, because he was suspended so often for targeting calls. They were like, is he going to play in the first half next week, or is he... it became that all of a sudden because it was happening so often, it felt like. And that was where a big issue came in. But Matt Jones will be fine.
Last comment, and then we go to a break. Jimmy B, overall, the Baylor offense reminded me too much in Stillwater of the 2020 offense. Let's hope it looks better this week, and they do as well. When we come back.
It did. I thought so, too.
Last week, we had Mac Rhodes on. And we had questions for him about the game day atmosphere, the berm, the seating, the tailgating, all of that. And then eventually I took a bunch of your email, printed every one of them, took a